The Santa Ana winds carried the scent of sage and distant rain through the streets of Claremont Mesa as 12-year-old Lucas Martinez walked out of John Muir Elementary School for what would be the last time anyone from our world would see him. It was Thursday, October 15th, 2019, and the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the playground, where Lucas had spent countless hours dreaming about the stars and wondering what lay beyond the horizon of his suburban San Diego neighborhood. Lucas was a quiet, introspective boy with unruly dark hair that never seemed to stay combed and bright brown eyes that held an intelligence that often surprised adults. He was small for his age, but tough in the way that kids who spent their free time exploring canyons and collecting rocks tend to be. His backpack, a worn blue JanSport that had belonged to his older brother before him, was always heavy with library books about astronomy, geology, and Native American folklore. He lived with his grandmother, Rosa Martinez, in a modest ranch-style house on Marlborough Avenue, just a 10-minute walk from school. Rosa had raised Lucas since he was 4 years old, after his parents died in a car accident on Interstate 8 during a flash flood. She was a retired teacher who had spent 40 years in the San Diego Unified School District, and she understood the unique blend of curiosity and restlessness that drove her grandson to ask endless questions about everything from why the desert bloomed only after rain to whether there might be life on other planets. Lucas excelled in science and mathematics but struggled with the social aspects of school. He was the kid who preferred spending recess alone, sketching constellations in his notebook, or studying the patterns of clouds rather than playing basketball with his classmates. His teacher, Mrs. Sarah Chen, recognized his exceptional intelligence and had been working with Rosa to get Lucas into the district's gifted program. That Thursday afternoon, Lucas had stayed after school to work on a science project about the geological formation of the Anza-Borrego Desert, which lay just 2 hours east of San Diego. He was fascinated by the desert's ancient history and had been reading about the indigenous peoples who had lived there for thousands of years, particularly the Kumeyaay and Cahuilla tribes who considered certain areas of the desert to be sacred spaces. Mrs. Chen remembered Lucas being unusually excited that day, talking about strange dreams he'd been having about walking through the desert at night, under stars that seemed close enough to touch. In these dreams, he said, someone was calling his name in a language he didn't understand but somehow comprehended. The dreams were so vivid that he'd started keeping a journal about them, filling pages with sketches of star patterns and desert landscapes that seemed too detailed for a 12-year-old who had never been to the places he was drawing. School ended at 3:15, and Mrs. Chen watched Lucas pack his heavy backpack with the same methodical care he always showed. He had checked out 3 new books from the library that day: Star Maps of the Southwestern Sky, Sacred Sites of the American Southwest, and The Hidden Waters of the Desert. The librarian, Ms. Patricia Valdez, noted that Lucas had been particularly interested in books about desert spirituality and astronomy lately, often asking for materials about Native American star knowledge and desert survival. Lucas left school at 3:30, taking his usual route home along Marlborough Drive. Several neighbors saw him walking at his typical unhurried pace, stopping occasionally to examine interesting rocks or to look up at the sky. Mrs. Eleanor Wright, who lived 3 blocks from the school, was watering her garden when Lucas passed by around 3:45. She waved to him and he smiled and waved back, just as he had done hundreds of times before. That was the last confirmed sighting of Lucas Martinez in the world as we know it. When Lucas didn't arrive home by 4:15, Rosa Martinez felt the first stirrings of worry. Lucas was punctual by nature and always called if he was going to be late. She walked the route to school, checking with neighbors and looking in all the places where Lucas might have stopped to explore. When she didn't find him, she called the school to see if he had stayed for an after-school program she had forgotten about. Mrs. Chen confirmed that Lucas had left at his normal time with his backpack full of library books. She offered to help search the neighborhood, knowing how close Rosa and Lucas were, and understanding how unusual it was for the boy to deviate from his routine without explanation. By 6 o'clock, when Lucas still hadn't returned or answered his cell phone, Rosa called the San Diego Police Department. Officer Maria Santos, a 15-year veteran of the SDPD who specialized in cases involving missing children, responded to the call and immediately began the initial investigation protocols. The search began with Lucas's known route home and expanded outward from there. Police officers, school staff, and community volunteers combed the neighborhood, checking every park, canyon, and vacant lot where a curious 12-year-old might have wandered. They searched the Mesa Canyon open space, thinking Lucas might have followed one of the trails he loved to explore. Lucas's cell phone was tracked to a location near the Balboa Avenue trolley station, about a mile from his usual route home. When officers arrived at the location, they found his phone lying on the ground next to a bus stop, apparently undamaged but completely dead, despite having been fully charged that morning, according to Rosa. The discovery of the phone raised immediate concerns. There was no reason for Lucas to have been in that area, and no explanation for why he would have left his phone behind. Security cameras at the trolley station showed Lucas standing at the bus stop around 4 o'clock. But the footage was puzzling because he appeared to be looking up at the sky and talking to someone who wasn't visible in the frame. Detective Ray Morrison, who had handled hundreds of missing persons cases during his 20-year career with the SDPD, took over the investigation. Detective Morrison was known for his thorough approach and his ability to find missing children, but Lucas's case presented unusual challenges from the beginning. The security footage from the trolley station was analyzed frame by frame. Lucas appeared calm and unafraid in the video, not like someone who was being coerced or threatened. He seemed to be having a conversation with an unseen presence, occasionally nodding and even smiling. At one point, he pulled out his phone and appeared to be showing something on the screen to his invisible companion. The final frames of the video showed Lucas walking away from the bus stop in the direction of State Route 163, which led toward the mountains and eventually to the desert. He was walking with purpose, as if he knew exactly where he was going, and he appeared to be following someone, though no other person was visible in the footage. Search teams expanded their efforts to include the areas along Route 163 and into the foothills of the coastal mountains. Search and rescue dogs were brought in from across Southern California, and the California Highway Patrol coordinated searches along all major routes leading away from San Diego. Despite these extensive efforts, no trace of Lucas was found. Rosa Martinez was devastated by her grandson's disappearance. She took leave from her part-time job at the local library to focus entirely on finding Lucas. She organized search parties, distributed flyers throughout San Diego County, and reached out to every contact she had made during her 4 decades in education. The story of Lucas's disappearance received extensive coverage in local media and eventually attracted national attention. Mrs. Chen shared Lucas's recent schoolwork and his journal of dreams with the police, hoping they might provide clues about his state of mind or his possible destination. The journal contained detailed sketches of desert landscapes, star maps that showed sophisticated understanding of astronomy, and notes about the calling, a voice that Lucas described as ancient and kind, speaking in a language that sounded like wind and water but that he somehow understood. One entry, dated just 3 days before his disappearance, read, "The voice is getting stronger. It's calling me to come home, but I don't understand how the desert can be home when I've never been there. In my dreams, I see a place where the earth meets the sky, and the stars are so close I can hear them singing. There are people there who have been waiting for me, and they know things about the universe that no one else knows." Dr. Michael Torres, a child psychologist brought in to analyze Lucas's journal and behavior, noted that while the content was unusual for a 12-year-old, it showed no signs of mental illness or distress. Instead, the journal suggested a child with an exceptionally active imagination and a deep spiritual connection to nature that was more typical of indigenous traditions than of suburban American culture. As weeks turned into months, the active search for Lucas was gradually scaled back, though Detective Morrison never officially closed the case. Rosa continued her own search efforts, driving to every desert community within a 500-mile radius of San Diego, showing Lucas's picture and asking if anyone had seen him. During these trips, Rosa began to encounter people who shared stories that made her question everything she thought she knew about her grandson's disappearance. In Borrego Springs, an elderly Kumeyaay tribal elder named Joseph Running Bear told her about children who sometimes answered the call of the Ancient Ones and disappeared into the desert to fulfill purposes that were beyond ordinary human understanding. According to Running Bear, there were sacred places in the desert where the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds was thin, and where certain individuals, usually children with pure hearts and old souls, could be called to serve as bridges between different realities. These children were considered blessed, chosen for roles that served the greater cosmic order. Rosa initially dismissed these stories as folklore, but as she encountered similar accounts from different desert communities, she began to wonder if there might be some truth to them. Multiple tribal elders from various nations told her about children who had vanished over the decades, only to be glimpsed years later in sacred desert locations, apparently unchanged by time, and serving as guardians of ancient wisdom. Dr. Sarah Blackhorse, an anthropologist from San Diego State University, who specialized in Southwestern indigenous traditions, became interested in Lucas's case after Rosa contacted her for information about desert spirituality. Dr. Blackhorse had documented similar disappearances throughout the Southwest and believed they represented a phenomenon that bridged the gap between spiritual traditions and unexplained scientific anomalies. According to Dr. Blackhorse's research, certain locations in the southwestern deserts exhibited unusual electromagnetic properties that some researchers theorized might affect human consciousness in ways that mainstream science didn't yet understand. These locations often corresponded with sites that indigenous peoples had considered sacred for thousands of years. The first anniversary of Lucas's disappearance was marked by a memorial service at John Muir Elementary School. Hundreds of people attended, including classmates, teachers, community members, and several tribal representatives who had been following the case. During the service, several children reported seeing a figure that looked like Lucas standing at the edge of the school playground, but when adults looked in that direction, no one was there. Mrs. Chen spoke about Lucas's exceptional intelligence and his deep connection to nature, noting that even as a young child, he had seemed to possess wisdom that went beyond his years. She read excerpts from his journal about the stars and the desert, and many attendees were moved by the sophistication of his thoughts and the spiritual depth of his observations. In the second year after Lucas's disappearance, reports began to surface from hikers and campers in the Anza Borrego Desert about encounters with a young boy who appeared to be around 12 years old and who seemed to know the desert with impossible intimacy. These sightings always occurred in remote areas, far from any roads or established trails. Mark Rodriguez, an experienced desert photographer, reported meeting a boy matching Lucas's description near the Slot Canyon area of Anza Borrego. According to Rodriguez, the boy appeared suddenly, while Rodriguez was photographing the night sky, and spoke knowledgeably about the constellations and their significance in Kumeyaay tradition. When Rodriguez asked the boy where he came from and whether he needed help, the boy smiled and said he was exactly where he belonged, before walking away into the darkness and disappearing. Similar encounters were reported by other desert visitors over the following months. The boy was always described as calm, wise beyond his years, and possessing an almost supernatural knowledge of desert survival and astronomy. Witnesses noted that he never seemed to age and always appeared to be in perfect health despite the harsh desert environment. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a physicist from UC San Diego who studied electromagnetic anomalies in desert environments, became interested in the locations where Lucas sightings were reported. Her research revealed that many of these areas exhibited unusual magnetic field variations and electromagnetic signatures that didn't match typical geological patterns. Dr. Vasquez theorized that certain desert locations might serve as natural focal points for energy fields that could affect human consciousness in extraordinary ways. She noted that indigenous peoples had often identified these same locations as sacred sites thousands of years before modern instruments could detect their unusual properties. In the third year after his disappearance, Lucas's case attracted the attention of Dr. James Whitehorse, a theoretical physicist from the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton, who specialized in consciousness research and quantum field theory. Dr. Whitehorse had been investigating reports of temporal anomalies in various locations around the world, and believed that Lucas's case might represent evidence of naturally occurring phenomena that challenged conventional understanding of space and time. According to Dr. Whitehorse's theories, certain individuals with specific neurological sensitivities might be able to perceive and interact with quantum fields that existed parallel to our normal reality. Children, with their naturally plastic consciousness and lack of rigid preconceptions about what was possible, might be particularly susceptible to these phenomena. Rosa Martinez continued her monthly trips to the desert, now accompanied by some of the researchers who had become interested in Lucas's case. During one of these trips to the Superstition Mountains area of the desert, the group encountered something that would fundamentally change their understanding of what had happened to Lucas. While camping near a formation of ancient volcanic rocks that the Kumeyaay considered sacred, the group was awakened in the middle of the night by what sounded like a child singing. The voice was clear and beautiful, carrying melodies that seemed to blend traditional Native American songs with sounds that were hauntingly otherworldly. When they emerged from their tents to investigate, they saw a figure sitting on a rock formation about 50 yards away, silhouetted against the star-filled sky. The figure was clearly a young boy, and although the distance and lighting made positive identification impossible, everything about his size and posture suggested it was Lucas. Dr. Blackhorse, who was part of the camping group, called out to the figure, but instead of approaching, the boy stood up and gestured for them to come closer. As they walked toward him, the singing continued, and the melody seemed to resonate with the very rocks around them, creating harmonic overtones that made the desert landscape itself seem to vibrate with music. When they reached the rock formation, the boy was gone, but in the place where he had been sitting, they found a small cairn of carefully stacked stones. Arranged around the cairn were several objects that Dr. Blackhorse immediately recognized as traditional Native American prayer offerings: sage bundles, polished stones, and small pieces of turquoise. Among these offerings was a modern item that brought tears to Rosa's eyes: Lucas's house key, hanging from the keychain she had given him for his 11th birthday. The key was in perfect condition, showing no signs of wear or exposure to the elements despite having been missing for 3 years. The discovery of Lucas's key and the encounter with the singing figure convinced Rosa that her grandson was alive, though existing in a form that transcended ordinary understanding. She began working more closely with tribal elders and researchers to understand the phenomenon that had claimed her grandson, while also transforming him into something greater. Joseph Running Bear and other tribal elders welcomed Rosa into their circle, teaching her about the traditional beliefs surrounding children who were called to serve as bridges between worlds. According to these traditions, such children were blessed with the ability to exist in multiple realities simultaneously, serving as guardians of ancient wisdom and helpers for lost souls who needed guidance between the physical and spiritual realms. In the 4th year after Lucas's disappearance, several research teams from different universities established a collaborative study of the electromagnetic and consciousness phenomena in the desert areas where Lucas had been sighted. The research was funded by private foundations interested in exploring the intersection of science and spirituality. The research teams discovered that the desert locations associated with Lucas sightings contained unusual crystalline formations in the rocks that could generate piezoelectric effects under certain atmospheric conditions. These effects might theoretically create energy fields capable of altering human consciousness or even affecting the fabric of space-time in localized areas. Dr. Vasquez's team documented multiple instances of electronic equipment malfunctioning in specific areas of the desert, always in locations that indigenous peoples had marked as sacred sites. GPS devices would show impossible readings, cameras would capture images of landscape features that weren't visible to the naked eye, and communication equipment would pick up signals that seemed to come from sources that couldn't be located. Meanwhile, reports of Lucas encounters continued to come in from desert visitors. A family camping in Joshua Tree National Park reported that a boy matching Lucas's description had appeared at their campsite during a sandstorm and guided them to safety when they became disoriented. A group of astronomy students from UC San Diego encountered him at an overlook in Anza Borrego, where he pointed out celestial objects and shared knowledge about their cultural significance that impressed even their professors. In every case, witnesses described Lucas as appearing slightly older than when he had disappeared, but not aging at the normal rate. They noted his serene demeanor, his profound knowledge of desert ecology and astronomy, and his apparent ability to appear and disappear without using conventional means of transportation. Dr. Whitehorse published a paper about Lucas's case that proposed a revolutionary theory about consciousness and its relationship to quantum fields. According to his hypothesis, certain individuals might be able to exist in what he termed expanded dimensional awareness, maintaining consciousness across multiple reality layers while serving specific functions in the cosmic order. As the 5th anniversary of Lucas's disappearance approached, Rosa organized another memorial service, this time held in the desert near one of the locations where he had been most frequently sighted. The service was attended by researchers, tribal elders, former classmates, and dozens of people whose lives had been touched by Lucas's story. During the ceremony, something extraordinary happened. As the sun set behind the mountains and the first stars became visible, a clear, pure voice could be heard singing across the desert. The song was one that Lucas had loved as a child, but it was being performed with harmonies and vocal techniques that suggested years of training and spiritual development. The singing lasted for nearly 20 minutes, and everyone present could hear it clearly, though no singer was visible. Several people with recording equipment captured the performance, and later analysis would show that the voice exhibited acoustic properties that defied explanation. It seemed to come from multiple directions simultaneously and contained overtones that suggested the involvement of more than one singer, though only one voice was audible. 2 days after the memorial service, on October 15, 2024, exactly 5 years after Lucas's disappearance, a group of geology students from San Diego State University made a discovery that would provide the most concrete evidence yet about his transformation and continued existence. The students were conducting a field study in the Carrizo Badlands area of Anza Borrego Desert State Park when they noticed something unusual protruding from a wash that had been carved deeper by recent flash floods. Professor Diana Chen, who was leading the expedition, immediately recognized the object as a backpack and called for the students to stop their approach, while she assessed whether it might be evidence in a criminal case. The backpack was a blue JanSport, faded by sun exposure but still clearly recognizable. When Professor Chen carefully examined it, she found a name tag sewn into the inner pocket: Lucas Martinez, John Muir Elementary School, San Diego, CA. She immediately contacted the San Diego Police Department and the researchers who had been studying Lucas's case. Detective Morrison, who had never given up on finding answers about Lucas's disappearance, drove out to the desert location to personally oversee the recovery of the backpack. When it was carefully extracted from the sand and opened, its contents would shock everyone involved in the case. The backpack contained all of Lucas's library books, but they were in impossible condition. Despite 5 years in the desert environment, the book showed no signs of water damage, sun bleaching, or deterioration. The pages were clean and crisp, as if they had been carefully preserved in a climate-controlled environment. More mysteriously, the books contained extensive margin notes written in Lucas's handwriting, but the notes demonstrated knowledge and understanding far beyond what a 12-year-old could have possessed. The astronomy book contained calculations and observations that impressed Dr. Vasquez when she reviewed them, and the book about sacred sites included annotations that showed intimate familiarity with indigenous traditions from tribes across the Southwest. In the book about desert ecology, Lucas had written detailed observations about plant and animal behaviors, weather patterns, and geological processes that could only have been gathered through years of careful study in the desert environment. His notes described seasonal changes, migration patterns, and ecological relationships with the precision of a trained field biologist. Most remarkably, the backpack contained a new notebook that hadn't been there when Lucas disappeared. The notebook was filled with entries dated over the 5-year period since his disappearance, documenting his experiences and transformations as he adapted to his new existence as what he called a desert guardian. The entries revealed that Lucas had been welcomed by a community of individuals who existed between dimensions, all of them people who had been called to serve as protectors of sacred places and guides for lost souls. His teachers included not only the spirits of indigenous ancestors, but also other children who had answered similar callings throughout history. Lucas wrote about learning to exist across multiple time streams, allowing him to help people in danger while also studying the deeper mysteries of consciousness and cosmic connection. He described his role as both student and teacher, learning ancient wisdom while also helping modern people find their way when they became lost in more than just physical sense. The final entry in the notebook was addressed to Rosa and dated just 1 week before the backpack's discovery. Dear Abuela Rosa, I know you've been worried about me and searching for answers all these years. I want you to know that I am safe, happy, and exactly where I'm meant to be. I wasn't taken from you. I was called to something beautiful and important that I couldn't understand when I was still living in only one dimension of reality. I exist now as a bridge between the world you know and the deeper realities that most people can't see. My job is to help people who get lost, not just in the desert, but in life itself. I guide them back to safety and help them understand that there are wonders in this universe that are worth believing in. I've learned so much from the ancient ones who have become my teachers. They've shown me that consciousness is not limited to one body or one lifetime, and that some of us are chosen to serve in ways that require us to transcend ordinary existence. I'm honored to be part of this work. Please don't be sad for me. I visit you often, even though you can't see me. I watch over you and I send you love through the desert winds. I see how you've grown and changed through searching for me, and how you've learned to find meaning in mystery rather than needing all questions to have simple answers. Tell Mrs. Chen that I'm still learning every day just like she taught me to do. Tell my classmates that the universe is full of wonders waiting for them to discover. And tell everyone who helped search for me that their love and caring created light that reached me even in the places between worlds. I am your grandson forever, and I am also something more now, a guardian of the sacred places and a friend to all who wander in search of truth. The desert has taught me that some disappearances are actually discoveries, and some endings are really new beginnings. With infinite love across all dimensions, Lucas, the discovery of Lucas's backpack and notebook, brought closure to his family while opening new questions about the nature of reality and human potential. Rosa found peace in knowing that her grandson had found his true calling and was serving a purpose that was larger than any ordinary life could contain. The notebook became the foundation for expanded research into consciousness studies and dimensional physics. Dr. Whitehorse and his colleagues used Lucas's observations to develop new theories about the relationship between human awareness and quantum field fluctuations. John Muir Elementary School established the Lucas Martinez Observatory, a small facility where students could study astronomy and learn about the connection between scientific investigation and spiritual wonder. Mrs. Chen, who had retired, volunteered to run programs that encouraged children to ask big questions about the universe and their place in it. The desert locations where Lucas had been sighted became informal pilgrimage sites for people seeking spiritual connection and understanding. Tribal elders worked with researchers and park services to ensure that these areas were respected and protected while remaining accessible to sincere seekers. Dr. Blackhorse compiled the various accounts of Lucas encounters into a comprehensive study of what she termed conscious transition phenomena, cases where individuals seem to evolve beyond ordinary human limitations while maintaining their essential identity and purpose. Desert rescue organizations reported a significant decrease in serious incidents in the areas where Lucas was known to be active. Hikers and campers frequently reported encounters with a helpful young guide who appeared when they needed assistance and disappeared once they were safe. Rosa Martinez began leading workshops for families of missing children, sharing her journey from despair to acceptance to wonder. She taught others how to find meaning in mystery and how to remain open to possibilities that existed beyond conventional understanding. The truth about Lucas Martinez's disappearance was not that he had been killed, kidnapped, or had run away from home. Instead, he had been chosen to transcend the limitations of ordinary existence and become a guardian of sacred spaces, existing across multiple dimensions while serving those who needed guidance and protection. His backpack, preserved in perfect condition for 5 years in the harsh desert environment, was not evidence of tragedy, but proof of transformation. Lucas had evolved from a curious 12-year-old into something far more magnificent, a bridge between worlds, a teacher of ancient wisdom and a guardian of the sacred places where earth touches sky. The desert had called to him because it recognized his pure heart and old soul, qualities that made him perfect for the role of interdimensional guide. His disappearance from the ordinary world had been his graduation into a form of existence that allowed him to serve the cosmic order while maintaining his love and connection to the people who had shaped his early life. Lucas's story became a testament to the idea that some mysteries are too beautiful and important to be solved in conventional ways, and that some children are destined for purposes that require them to outgrow the boundaries of normal human experience. He remained forever 12 years old and forever ancient, a guardian of wonder who ensured that the magic of the desert would continue to call to other seekers who were ready to discover that reality contained more possibilities than any single lifetime could explore.